Welcome to WTF is Web3, where we untangle the uncertainties of Web3 technologies. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information, giveaways, and ways to stay in touch. You're also going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to our podcast, our YouTube channel, and our private group so you don't miss out on exclusive content, freebies, and much more. If this episode seems like it was stripped out of a longer conversation, that's because it was. This is what we call a shallow dip, because it's basically the opposite of a deep dive, where we're going to give you a brief explanation of a concept, a term, or a topic that we just felt you would dig without having to listen to an entire episode. However, if you do want to listen to the entire episode, I invite you to check out the show notes, because that will get you to that longer episode and you can hear everything in context of the original conversation. Now that we've got that explanation out of the way, let's jump into the episode.
Just going back to the Metaverse as like a place that we can use a lot of these Web3 components. I'd like to just chat a little bit about some of the cool things that like we could think of that can be kind of cool for the Metaverse. So off the top of my head, you've mentioned NFTs sort of coming in. That makes a lot of sense, because if you have a digital first universe, we mentioned this briefly on what an NFT is. An NFT is a way to show ownership of one thing. It works really good with digitally native items because you can link that. You don't have to create this like real world separation. So this is why we were saying these digital photos work really good, because you can link this digitally native artifact to this blockchain log in this ledger, and you can prove ownership. Once you like take something off chain or you do some real life project or product, if it's a piece of art, very difficult to prove that is this digital token. So in this metaverse world, you now can have everything have this digital unique identifier, and it can be sold, it can be traded, but it can be proved that it's owned. So it gives this option for ownership, for really like to show off, right? To flex.
Yeah.
That's half of what people own in real life.
That's the big thing now. But and as I mentioned in the last episode, and I'll try to be brief so you can finish your thought. But I correlate NFTs as the digital representation or authentication of assets, and cryptocurrency is the digitization of money, and NFTs have a strong correlation to, and like last episode, we couldn't come up with a better term, I don't recall, than asset, something. It might not be an expensive painting. It might just be my family photo album, but it's something that says this was created by this person. There's this many of them. This is the legit one. This is number 45 of 100, whatever it is. That's the authenticator. That's the credibility in the title, the serial number. That title.
Title makes sense. Yeah, it's essentially a title for ownership for everything. And so with that, it's not limited to just an artifact. You're calling it an asset. I'll call it kind of an artifact, like a physical, tangible. In real world, it would be physical and tangible. In this digital world, obviously it's not, but it's still represented as a digital, tangible item. Yeah. But the cool thing, and we'll get into all this when we talk about NFTs, but NFT is really a way to record anything digitally native. I mean, you can then associate with any real world, but that includes sounds, videos,
movie clips,
series of, and not even that, but if this is a virtually immersive world, now this can be 3D renderings. So It can almost be like memories of this virtual world that is an NFT.
Yes.
So there's some really cool applications of this decentralized tool, right?
There's so much, and we'll go into more depth in an NFT specific podcast, because I don't want to do a disservice. But if you're a music artist, everyone's looking at it from a graphic standpoint. Okay, we could digitize stuff and flip these JPEGs and everything else, or stuff that's really impressive like the Beeple stuff or whatever else. But if you're a music artist, you can now create your songs and your albums. You can make them NFTs, and then your fans can support you by buying them. And if you get your song gets picked up for a music to be in a movie, and there's royalties being paid because of your success from the fans who supported you by buying the NFTs. You could have smart contracts and stipulations in there that give them royalties from their share of that ownership, by you being able to like fractionalize the rights of that work of whether it's an album or a song or however you want to do it. You can make castles for the metaverse, and you can sell those blueprints as NFTs. You can make vehicles in the metaverse and sell them. You could do a limited production run. You could do statues, like anything that you think of in the normal world that would be a thing, whether it's a book, the title to your house, all of that stuff can now have and it gives it an intrinsic value by being limited or somehow authenticated, as opposed to just being able to copy and paste everything you do. I spend hours and hours and days and months and weeks building this great castle or replicating a Frank Lloyd Wright house or something like that. And I make a 3D rendering of it that you can put in Decentraland. If you could just copy and paste that, why would I spend all that time? But if I can make it so it's that one thing, or I make 50 of them, there's only going to be 50 created by me. And I'm, maybe the Toll Brothers are eventually going to get into making houses in the metaverse.
That's actually a thing that I've been hearing a lot about is the developers sort of branching into these.
It makes sense. All they have to do is dust off these drawings that they already have, and they don't even need to worry about having an engineer now go through it. They can get way more grandiose with it if they wanted.
So what's interesting about this lends itself very much to our conversation we had about skeuomorphic items with new technologies.
Yes.
And essentially that's what's going on here. We have this new realm that we're replicating things that had to be done a certain way. Like a building needed a blueprint and it needed a foundation and needed to look a certain way because that's what physics required. Mm-hmm. And so now we're going to take this and transpose it into this metaverse world, which is, makes sense. It helps us become accustomed to this new universe so it feels natural. But there's no limitation on what we know as reality to have to be replicated in this new universe. And I think that's a really neat thing, because you mentioned some stuff that like we're already using, but you can have like some really amazing inventions here. Like it could just be things that just defy the mind. Like you could be thinking of things from dreams or movies or
you don't have the same physics that you have to worry about. You don't have like you can make a tower completely made out of glass, and you don't.
But you're trying to describe things because like we're describing it based on what we know. Like
and we're going to be so limited. You know who's there? There's I was talking to this guy who's a programmer, and he had this project that he was involved in where they taught very young children. I think it started like somewhere in the single digits. They taught them basic ways to start coding, and as they learned it, they got more and more in depth with the coding. And I'm not sure which languages, but the stuff that he's like, the things that kids think of, because they don't have these limitations that we have, and they're growing up with computers. So as these kids are growing up, as I mentioned before, the Roblox kids, the Minecraft kids, this is all going to be second nature, and they're going to be so unchained from a creative standpoint. They're going to be able to come up with stuff that we've never thought of. And what's going to be interesting is when stuff that is created in the metaverse starts influencing stuff in the real world, where there's architecture that's like, you know what, we might be able to do if we had this new composite, and now we finally have this way to fabricate steel this way. We actually could start bringing in some of these metaverse buildings. I keep going back to buildings. I used to want to be architect. We could start bringing that into the real world. Not all of them, not a tower made out of glass, unless maybe we'll get some crazy strong, clear polymer. I don't know.
Well, life imitating art, like it's a thing that's definitely going to happen from here. And it's like Inception. I'm thinking of Inception with the world folding over on itself. Like stuff like this could very well exist in this metaverse world, and it can be an NFT, which is sort of the unique thing about it. Like what you were sort of describing of what could become an NFT is essentially like intellectual property stuff, like traditional intellectual property, anything that can have a copyright or patent. So a lot of, you artists out there or you creators, those sort of things can translate. If you can patent it or you can copyright it, it essentially can be an NFT. However, it's not limited to that. Like we know software can be that's IP. Like you can get a patent or a copyright depending on the usage and the form. So you can have software within a program, which is sort of mind bending. And most likely, and this is where I kind of want to segue a bit, to work, the ability to work and create within an a metaverse world. You've mentioned that you can like do jobs and earn, native tokens, but even outside of that, like to actually create something within this metaverse world that is intended to be exported out of the metaverse world and used in real life. I see some amazing applications. Coding is one where I can see the metaverse becomes an immersive, like no code coding world that people come up with great ways to be able to create things and set up very visually, like you see in these movies where they sort of like mold things and like, yeah, I want that. You sort of spin around and I want that. And it's a great way to be in your creation. And then, you can step out and boom, then it's made by a 3D printer, or it's created by the software to actually become an executable application. Yeah. And so that's something that's really interesting. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that there's so many projects that I've seen that I could discuss, and each one of them would just like, we could go down, like imagine a 3D painting. Like they've used AR. So we're combining a couple of things now. They've used AR. They have certain brushes. And I think this is actually a program that you can get through like Oculus and stuff, but you can make a 3D painting that then someone in VR or AR can walk through, and they have these different perspectives, and you can have little things that are hidden and it looks different this way. And imagine it, and taking it from just the two-dimensional flat canvas, and now it's actually a painting that you can be in, and then turn that into an NFT or make that something that you can experience within the metaverse. There's you mentioned 3D printing. I can make those designs NFTs. I can make it so that once you earn this trophy or something, there's a limited amount that can be printed one time each. And now you have the right to make one printing, of this item. You mentioned software programs being NFTs. There's a project called Game Starter. They're they've got a cryptocurrency, but their project is, they're a launch pad for games that are NFTs. So you're able to invest in them, and they're games that are then NFTs. So then you have rights as a player to the game. Instead of me just buying a copy of Grand Theft Auto, I can be an early adopter into Grand Theft Auto. I get all my friends addicted to Grand Theft Auto, and then whatever upsells and ways for them to generate money, which Rockstar is very effective at. I will be able to get a piece of that, because not only am I a participant, maybe I don't even play the game, but now I know my kid's playing it. Oh, what are you playing? You're not leaving your room for that game. What is that? I'm going to buy a little bit of it. It's just, you can go on and on with all of these converging technologies and this new stuff that these young kids are going to be the ones who are going to be able to blow your mind with what's going to be possible, because we're still, trying to get a grip. Like some people I remember before the internet was something that people had in their houses. So imagine the perspectives we have versus the lack of limitations that someone who's always had an internet, grew up at 2 years old, they're thumbing around on an iPad. It's going to be really exciting. It's going to be very, very hard to keep up.
Yeah, it definitely will be. This is going to grow really fast. And I think a lot of people have realized this is sort of that next step in technology, especially in this sort of social interaction bit of technology.
All right, that is going to wrap it up for this shallow dip. But if you want more information and more conversation, I invite you to check out the episode notes and our channel, because not only can you listen to the entire conversation from which this clip was stripped, but there's also going to be more episodes that do a deeper dive on this specific topic. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to make sure you don't forget to check out the information and the links in the show notes. Some of that stuff is going to get you into freebies and raffles and contests and all sorts of other promotions. But also, we've got a private group dedicated to our listeners and our followers. We would love to see you there, love to see you collaborate, join, and get exclusive content that we are only distributing through these other means. Speaking of distributing through other means, I want to make sure that you're also subscribed to our podcast, our YouTube channel, and again, join that private group so you know everything that we know as soon as we know it.